Hello and welcome. It's Father Barry. We're in the week of September 27th to October 2nd. And in this week, we're going to have two just special talks. One will air on Monday, one will air on Thursday. And they're longer talks, and they're what I call the late summer spiritual talks in the year of St. Joseph. The first one is St. Joseph and comparing this great saint and the wonders of the hummingbird, the small but amazing life used by God. I hope you enjoy. I'm coming to you casually here from the beach porch. I'm taking some time for myself, but I'm also using this time for prayer as I have this whole afternoon free to ponder something that the Lord has planted in my mind, or the wonders of a hummingbird. And some people have little hummingbird feeders down here on the shore of Delaware and Maryland. And I have been introduced to the ruby-throated hummingbird, which is popular here in this coastal region. And it comes in the spring and leaves in September. And it's popular in gardens and feeders here. And I'm not been able to get one to fly in here by training. And that cushion I had there doesn't have a hummingbird on it, but I thought that would be a kind of place a hummingbird would like to visit. Now there's a wonder to the hummingbird, and from the ruby-throated one to the rufous hummingbird, that's an orange colored throat male bird. The females are whitish speckled throats, and the male of the ruby-throated has this big green back and a forked tail, but the female has a green back, and she has like a banded coat of white, black, and gray-green. And these are people that have informed me how they know the difference from spending time looking at them. They said hummingbirds will be right on the other side of the glass, and they'll look at you. They'll actually recognize you, it seems, and know that you're the one feeding them. And they just kind of hover and look at you and then drink from the nectar with appreciation. The hummingbird is one of the smallest or humblest of creatures, and so I often think St. Joseph is one of the smallest or humblest of saints. And so I think there's a comparison. Now, the smallest of hummingbirds are not here. They're in Mexico and Cuba, the bee and the bumblebee hummingbird. They're size of a bee and lighter than a penny. Can you imagine something so small? There's a spiritual connection to the hummingbird. They fly in what we could see as a pattern 8, like the pattern of infinity. And particularly in St. Joseph's Trinidad, the paradise of hummingbirds in the world, they see a lot of connections of this wonderful little creature and the wonder of St. Joseph. And the place they have this paradise of hummingbirds is called St. Joseph. And you can go online and find some things about them if you'd like. It's at yeretret.com. Yeretret, Yerettrett, Yeretret.com, and it speaks of the wonders of this bird. They're as caught up as people are of the swallows of San Juan Capistrano on our California coast. But this is an all-year affair of wonder in Trinidad. And they say that these little birds help them to enter into the spiritual realm because they recognize God and some amazing thing in nature. And it helps them know of the humility of Joseph and this one life used amazingly, like a little bird is amazing them. Also one life and able to serve God so well And the small bird that's fluttering its wings, they say, is sort of like the fluttering of the Holy Spirit, and the energy in the life of the little hummingbird is like the great energy of God within Joseph at work. When you look at St. Joseph and how humble he is and how he didn't get recognized much in history, and finally a year of St. Joseph we have here in 2021, we think of St. Joseph, and like the hummingbird, he really lives in the now. A hummingbird lives in the now, and Joseph lived in the now. He lived in a way that was apocalyptic, like John the Baptist and like the Essene community, expecting a change in the air, a spiritual change, a coming. So did St. Joseph, and he practiced his Jewish faith the best he could. And he went to the temple, he went to the synagogue, he practiced the faith. And he practiced it with a certain joy, even though Israel was under the thumb of the Romans. He still practiced the gratefulness of the post-exiles come back to Israel, the end of the Hebrew Testament. He practiced it with a happiness that they could be practicing again in their homeland. Of course, Joseph has this connection to Bethlehem and to King David and this line of faith. And, King David was a man after God's heart, and now Joseph is a man after God's heart, but he is kind of hiding in Israel in a time where everything has gone asunder, and the land of Israel is turned over due to her own infidelity to foreign powers, but the Jewish faith is back, and they're trying to practice an Anoim, a poor in spirit faith. But then there's also people that are practicing just a surfacey, kind of legalistic, survival political faith. And in the contrast, you have St. Joseph, and there's a healing coming to Israel because of men like him. And God's going to come into this man with this powerful, positive manner. For you and I, we have people that are cradle Catholics or cradle Christians, and you've practiced your faith steadfastly through the years. You've sought to please the Lord by your words and your actions, by the love of your heart, by your mind, by being a disciple of the Lord. And if so, then that positiveness that the Lord is coming again, as promised, the second coming, you would be imitating then Joseph, who believed the Lord was coming as promised for Messiah to arrive in Israel. And there he was, near the center of all things. And with this powerful, positive energy, I don't like the word energy, but we'll say it, his powerful energy is mostly like the little hummingbird, that powerful, positive energy of the hummingbird, this lightness of being, this freedom that I think Joseph also exercised, a freedom, living for God, and a lightness of being, not taking himself too seriously. What Joseph did take seriously was the faith of Israel and the hope in the promise. There was a promise, a covenant made by God. God keeps his promises. Israel, not so good at it, but Joseph wanted to be a covenant keeper on his end, and with other people living in covenant and expectation and hope for God. And then Joseph gets to experience that. There's a great power in the faith of Joseph, and there's a great simplicity of heart. And it's just an interesting comparison to the hummingbird, because this little bird that lives up in the northern parts of Trinidad, up in the Maracas Valley, there's 14 different varieties of this bird, all the different colors, and just amazing spectacle of it all. There's a strong faith in Trinidad, the Catholic faith, that there's a wonder among us, even of what God wants to do through us in Jesus Christ. For the people who know hummingbirds down there, they say that a hummingbird is fairly friendly. And it likes to even fly up to your face if you're one of the feeders for it. And they say that a hummingbird likes to investigate the new. It's an inquisitive, curious bird, always hopeful for food and appreciative of those who will give it. And Saint Joseph is looking for, the food from heaven. He's looking at, like the Our Father would be taught, give us our daily bread. I think Joseph knew that phrase when he was raising Jesus. And I think even before that, he understood this seeking out for daily bread and investigating what is new. Well, he's investigating what can be the fulfillment of the covenant, the renewal or the new covenant that Messiah could bring. They say who raise the little hummingbirds that they live a life of searching, and when they're out in the free world, they're seeking for food from flowers, 1,000 to 2,000 flowers a day they're looking to light on. They can even memorize the native territory that they're going, and they know where things are. They have this amazing learning and memory. They call it the hippocampus. They say it's 5 times of a songbird. The hummingbird has a great recognition, and he also can distinguish the positive and negative, or that would be beneficial and that which would be harmful or a threat. And I think this is Joseph. I think he has had a life of searching, and he is living and practicing the faith like a hummingbird, sucking deeply from the nectar of the flowers and knowing the source, the daily source, the living God, and the recognition and the distinguishing of what is good and evil, what is real of faith and what is false or of idols. This is St. Joseph, and he learns so well in his faith that he becomes this wise and just man. And when God is looking for the person to father or foster father the Redeemer, he's got his man in Joseph. Okay, I see we're almost at a break. We've gone to 11, 12 minutes here. And so I'll just go another minute and 15 seconds. And I'm going to try at the end to just freeze like a hummingbird and hover right in midair for you. I don't know if it's possible, but I'll give it a try. So here's the last minute and 15 seconds before we take a little break. So down there in St. Joseph, Trinidad, and you can watch some of the videos that they've made of all the wonder going on down there with hummingbirds. They say that the hummingbird is more of a flight, not fight species. It's a creature that's not looking to pick a fight. It is usually going to take flight. You think of St. Joseph and his flight into Egypt. You think of Joseph not looking for fight or hostile tension with Mary's pregnancy. You're looking at Joseph when he comes back is not going to live close by Jerusalem, where the successor of Herod is still there and the false king of the Jews could still be a threat. He's not looking for a fight. He goes up to Nazareth and lives there. He has distinctive sight, Joseph does. He sees the faith deeply because he's longed to see it that way, like a distinctive sight of a hummingbird that doesn't just see the coral purple, but can see ultraviolet plus green, ultraviolet plus red, ultraviolet plus yellow. It has a keen sense of seeing. Hey, I think I pulled it off. I got to freeze for a second. So here's a hummingbird, and he's actually on a stem. He's not needing to fly and hover. He's drinking, just staying on a stem but nearby a flower. Okay, so we're taking a break now, and I didn't even mention a few other things like St. Joseph. He will defend. The hummingbird will defend as needed. He'll be a defender of the nest, of course, with his claws, with his beaks. Okay. And he will rescue his mates, even if his mate falls. Someone said they saw a hummingbird grab their mate and fly it back up to the nest. One of the more amazing things they've seen with their hummingbird. And I said, well, it sounds like Joseph the guardian, the defender. All right, so we'll just take ourselves a little break before we go on into the next part. While hummingbirds are all around the world, you can see some amazing variety of them in the lush Marrakesh Valley in Trinidad. And Trinidad, Tobago, some great places for hummingbird watching. But there's a place called St. Joseph's, and it's really hummingbird paradise. You can go on tours there and just have your life changed by the mystery of the hummingbird and how God works through this fascinating creature that He has made. Well, there's a lot of Catholics down there in Trinidad, and they say it's a real spiritual experience to be around the hummingbird. And their place is called St. Joseph, and you know, St. Joseph too is fascinating in how he is able to do what he does. The hummingbird, first of all, it can go left, it can go right, it can go up and down, backwards. It can just hover and just stay right there, flapping its wings like 100 times a second. Amazing, right? I think amazing too is Saint Joseph. You know, he's like the person that God uses to cross from backwards from the Old Testament, the law, and forward into Christ and grace in the New Testament and new life. And so the kind of backwards and forwards, but yet hovering in the middle for the many years, Joseph is raising Jesus. And you're just waiting for what the deliverer is going to do. Compare that to just the hovering of the hummingbird, just kind of hanging right in there. It's an amazing thing to see. But Joseph, it's amazing that for maybe 3 decades or less, a little less than that, he just is in the ministry with Jesus, hovering before the deliverance ministry embarks, before Jesus announces the kingdom of God is at hand. But God was present there in all of his power, and Joseph knows, and just wondering. But he knows Moses and David and Elijah and Joshua. They all kind of wait before God uses them in their mighty way. The same thing with even Joseph, the patriarch, which Saint Joseph is named after. So he knows that he can hover right there where it's like eternity is hovering, everything in the balance, and Joseph's willing to stay balanced like that. So down in St. Joseph's, Trinidad, and really in any backyard where there's a hummingbird feeder, you can be fascinated with this hovering bird. And this hovering is also kind of a connection to Joseph, because Jesus comes and he's hovering between the Old and New Testament, a fulfillment of the Hebrew covenant, and there's a hovering there. And Joseph is just ministering to Jesus as a babe, and then as a child, and a young adult, and then as a man. And they're just kind of hovering, and the ministry years haven't started yet. And so they're just kind of, like a hummingbird, just the fluttering of its wings. It's sort of like time is fluttering, and that's my lesson with the hummingbird anyway. The mustard seed thing, I think, too, is something that we should talk about. You know, if the hummingbird is small and we compared it to Joseph and Saint Joseph, and well, Joseph would have probably taught about the mustard seed lesson with Jesus and just was amazed that Jesus once started so small, and he's growing up, and he probably said, you know, you see this little mustard seed here, it grows up to be that plant over there. And nature is amazing, and the power even in a seed. And Joseph probably teaching that lesson, and Jesus uses it as a parable. Now I'm imagining that. We don't know Joseph for sure taught that lesson. I'm just imagining that it likely would have happened that way. And just the fascination with things in nature. Of course, Jesus is growing up, and he is the God, the Son, the Word through whom all things were made. And so it's interesting that he's looking at his own handiwork. But there's a fascination with nature. Jesus was the fascination of Joseph and Mary. Definitely, he is the fascination of nature. Okay? He is the fascination to them. The one whom all things have come into being, he is their boy. Just amazing to think of. Listening to some Catholics describe being around the birds all the time. They say the hummingbird is like it's praying always. It's just aloft all the time. It's able to stay aloft and in the air. We can land and stop for a while, but when we see it and are fascinated, it's just flying, and it's like our ability to open up and become spiritual. Our ability to pray, our ability to love, our ability to be in harmony with God. Something fascinating happens with the human being when we connect and are acting in nature with God, our supernature, our soul to soul, and with our minds and bodies, in sync with God, finally. It was meant to be a wonder in our nature, and Christ comes to recapture it, soul and body. But for the hummingbird, it's not a fallen creature. It lives in the fallen, broken down world. But it represents something fascinating. It's just timeless. The people down there in Trinidad had this hummingbird paradise at St. Joseph. They say that there's something of eternity in the flight of these birds. And they say that through generations, these birds have been seen in a very special way. A connection with nature that's a connection with God that just makes you wonder and makes you think, how is it that this bird does this? And of course, how can it be? Mary's question. And Joseph's later, how is it going to be that God can come as a human being, and that God can enter into us and reconcile us sinners and get us back home to paradise? How can it be? Well, my friends, we're going to wrap it up here. There's so much to say about St. Joseph, and even with this analogy of the hummingbirds and the small but fascinating creature. From the porch here and from the seat I was talking to you from, I depart. And our next program will be on September 30th. So instead of doing a day-to-day this week, I'm doing 2 retreats. So this was the first one, Spiritual Talk. And our second one will be on September 30th, and then the content will be long enough to last into the weekend. And I hope you enjoy these different types of tapes I'm making for you this week. as I made them down on a beach week. This is Father Barry, day to day, and sometimes week to week with St. Joseph.